talking with director Sarah Teale right now. Kill Chain, Cyber Attack on America's Elections. It is a fascinating documentary. Sarah, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to meet you.
It's really nice to meet you too. I wish we could be doing this in person, but at least we're talking right now, and definitely a good thing to be talking about. I mean, obviously coronavirus is the main story right now, but the November elections aren't that far away, and you guys really go into the fact that our voting system is really ill-prepared when it comes to bad actors and foreign interference. So you've been on this beat for a long, long time. What was it like diving back into it here in 2019 and 2020?
Rather terrifying. I mean, we did the first film in 2005, came out in 2006. It got nominated for an Emmy. We thought it would institute an awful lot of change. Nothing changed. Very, very little. And so in 2016, here we were facing attacks from outside of the US, which was very scary, and it's still wide open. And coronavirus presents its own particular challenge, because potentially, certainly for the primaries, people are not going to be able to go to their local precinct. Yeah. Which in a way is quite good, because hopefully it'll lead to paper mail-in ballots.
Do you think that's the solution in all this, just going back to paper?
Yes. As Hari likes to say, everything is hackable. Everything is hackable, and these machines are ancient. Many of them haven't been changed since they were first put in place in 2002. They are really old. And there's a scene in the film with DEF CON, the hackers conference in Las Vegas, 30,000 hackers, most of them kids, some of them as young as 11. They hacked straight into those machines in minutes. So...
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the most mind-blowing scenes of the documentaries, is people rolled up right into the conference room. And, you know, how long did it take that one guy? I mean, it seemed like it was no time at all.
5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. It really was so quick, and he hacked that machine from across the room. He could have done it from outside of the building, in a car driving by. Wow. And he could have changed anything. So this is what we're looking at, and people don't seem to quite understand what that means.
Yeah, and another thing people don't understand too is a glitch in the voting machine. I think you guys did a really good job in debunking that. So why don't you explain what a glitch actually is and what it actually isn't?
This is not a glitch. A glitch would be if one thing went wrong intermittently, randomly, perhaps on only one machine. What we're talking about here is system-wide. You know, the Russians, and it was the Russians, got into the voter registration rolls in all 50 states. That is not a glitch. That is systematic hacking of every single state, every single voter registration roll. And as Sue Halpern says in the film, if you prevent people from voting, you have essentially hacked the vote. If you've knocked them off the voter registration rolls, that's what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, going off of that point, I feel like Georgia was the epicenter for that with Stacey Abrams in 2018. You guys were there for that. What was most fascinating about that whole situation?
That was crazy, and actually we simply lucked out. We went, I mean, there are so many different precincts, and here you are, you're only one team, one crew. We happened to luck out to go to a middle-class Black Gwinnett County, which actually is the largest voting county in Georgia, and it tends to swing elections. And all of the cards were down. Nobody could vote. Every single card. That's what I mean about it not being a glitch. If it was a glitch, maybe one or two cards would have gone down. Not all of them. So people waited in line for 5-6 hours. And the amazing thing is that a lot of people even stuck it out and stayed there for 6 hours to vote. And this happened in 3 different counties across Georgia, all of them majority Black. And that raises some serious questions.
Yeah, I mean, that was a race that was decided by less than 2%.
Less than 2%, 1.6, I think it was. And of course, Stacey Abrams is Black. It makes you think. And of course, her opponent, Brian Kemp, was Secretary of State. And he had moved all of the voting machines from Kennesaw State University, where they had been housed, into the Secretary of State's office.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned the doc that the one guy from the one organization, the lobbyist, comes and works for him as the chief of staff. Like that, it's just insane. It's all happening right in front of us.
It's happening so boldly, right in front of us. He did not care.
I asked Hari a similar question. I want to ask you too. When it comes to elected officials and just anybody talking about this, people are saying you can't hack into it because it doesn't connect to the internet when it comes to the voting machines. Right. Is it just a lack of knowledge when it comes to this, or is it just blatant ignorance and just trying to just cover up the truth? What do you think about that?
We asked ourselves that many, many times. How could Comey have testified to the fact that this? Did he know? I actually don't. I think it's ignorance. I think in some cases people just don't think it through. If you have a voting machine and it's not connected to the internet that day, maybe they feel, but also what I'm not sure we made clear enough in the film is that in order to get the votes from the precincts to the central counter where they are centrally counted, they are sent over the internet. And so there are many, many different ways in which those machines and our election process touches the internet, beyond just the actual voting machine. So sometimes I think they're hedging. I think Thomas Hicks, who's head of the EAC, is hedging when he says, you know, the individual machines are not connected to the internet. He knows that there are all kinds of other systems that are. And also, as Hari points out in the film, those machines are connected to the internet before voting day. And you can get in the day before election day. You can get in a week before the election day, anytime.
Or you can buy an old voting machine off of eBay and start tinkering around with that too, which was just totally crazy also.
I know. The first hacks figuring it out that we did with Hari was on my dining room table.
Wow.
I mean, and they're still in my basement.
And those types of machines are still being used in 20 states, right?
20 different states.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
I think
maybe the coronavirus was sent to actually change this, because if it is still around, it's definitely still around for the primaries. If it's still around in November, which is potentially likely, we will have to go to mail-in ballots. You know, most of these precincts are run by elderly people who are most vulnerable for coronavirus, and also most do not understand the technology. So we need to change this quickly because as is clear in the film, the Russians and others are in our systems. It's very hard to locate them, but they're there. They will still be there in November.
Yeah, and it feels like it's also not just us. Like, you guys do a nice job in showing everybody across the world who's been impacted by election interference. So why do you think Russia has been so interested in doing this? I mean, you get into it in the doc. It's not necessarily they have the biggest military, but they can kind of level the playing field when it comes to cyber.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
They want to create chaos in democracies. They do not believe in democracies. Putin has just put it that he can now be the head of Russia for life. We don't think that's a good idea. We believe in democracies, and he has done everything he can to undermine democracies. So that's what we're faced with.
When people check this out, what's the most important thing you want them to take away from all this?
That democracy is worth fighting for, that our way of life depends on being able to pick the people who make the decisions that govern our lives, that govern our schools, that govern everything that we do, if you think about it. And that it is important to defend it. And in order to do that, we need to go to paper ballots and risk limiting audits. It's not hard to do. You can buy the scanner in Staples. Seriously, why we're paying hundreds of millions of dollars for these outmoded, outdated, huge, vast things that look like the computer from the 1950s in order to scan them, when we all know what a scanner is. We can go to Staples and get a scanner.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Sarah, thanks so much for the time. Why don't you tell everybody when they can check out the documentary? Thank you so much for your interest. It's March 26th, 9 p.m., HBO, Kill Chain, the Cyber War on America's Elections. There you go. That's
Please
Sarah
watch.
and DJ. See you next time on the Sit Down.